Well, the panic is done with the weddings, the kids and stuff like that. And I've begun to uncover from the saw work so I can start doing things that I want to do. These two saws right here are the 660s that have given me the most joy over the last year or so. I'm going to bring these two up to what I would consider the latest spec. And this is a day I have that's not slated for work. I did cutting all morning long on the tractor. There's no sense in posting all that. I've done it a lot of time. I've got this field to finish. And then on the other side of that hedgerow, I've got a field to take down. That's all we're going to do this first round. Rain comes in Wednesday, and we don't really have time to do all of it. I've got another 40 acres over there that I'm not going to get to this time around. But that old thing, my newer one died. Kind of catastrophic failure, so I'm not sure when I'll have it back in service, but certainly not for this round. Maybe not the year. That saw is going to get a little bit of time in order to kind of bring it up to what I consider a reliable spec. So that's what I'm going to go about doing. I'm going to work on that one today, and when I get the parts, this one will be next. And just go out and detail this saw right here. So it'll be, again, what I consider a useful configuration. And the other saw I want to work on today is that 925 that I used with Bob. I need to put a different carburetor on it, I think. I pretty much messed that one up by leaving the screen off. I guess what I had done was when I was cleaning that saw and I hit it with the air, the little screen went flying and I didn't see it. And I put it back together and sucked some dirt right into that jet. So as the day went on, it started running a little bit too lean. My fault, you know, one of those deals. So, and just as trivia, I've showed this before. This is something I've put in one of my really early videos. Does anyone know what this is? How about these? These are very, very special tools for something. Anybody have any ideas? We're going to use these this year, by the way. All 5 of these tools are going to get some use this year. If anybody knows what they are, well, then you just got a preview of a couple of the projects that are going to happen this summer. Interesting. Guess I better put a different worm gear in there, and maybe I need to upgrade that clutch. What I'm going to do is, in the theme of this video, is the saws that I plan to use and the ones I like to use, which includes this saw because I like it an awful lot. I'm going to upgrade these. I've got 3 of these 660s that are going to be a part of my work saw fleet this year. This was the Farmer Jones build, which actually turned out to be a great running saw. I had put OEM studs on this one. It's getting a highway clutch because it needs one. It needs a better clutch. It's going to lose a little bit of zip. It's going to lose a little bit of acceleration because it's a heavier clutch. My dogs. But I think it needs that heavier clutch. I'm not going to care so much about how it feels. I care an awful lot about how long it lasts, you know. Probably going to rattle that on just a little bit. I think what I want to do and where I want to go with this video is just do a quick review before I start getting back into these of what I've learned and how I build mine. Okay, I feel as if there's so many people out there doing this. I don't want to be considered the expert or anything else. So let other people assume that position and assume that role. But what I will do is I will articulate what it is I do to mine. And a person can choose to listen or choose to do something different. And that's a decision that everybody makes for their own builds and their own saws. First thing is the shimmed chain adjuster, the little the screw on the end where it has a bearing surface. I put a little bit of a brass tube on there. This is what I'm using for the stock to make the bushing. A K&S Precision Metals number 8129 round brass tube, 3/16 by .014 or 4.76 millimeters. And I take a little piece of that off there and I put it on the end of the adjuster screw, so it holds it into that crown gear just a little bit more. So I do that on every one of mine. Second is some of these springs for the chain brake that come straight off. They're useless. I mean, you can bend them down and they'll work for a little bit, but always get one of these, whether it's from an aftermarket company. I've been getting just the OEM ones, and I always put those springs in there. So that's two things I do in every one of them. The third is I put the OEM studs, the bar studs. So that's three things I do on every one of them. And now I'm going to put the OEM trigger and choke on all of mine. So that's four things that I'm going to do on every one of them. 5 is putting on a better handle here. In this case, it's the HL Supply sourced highway handlebar. So that's 5 on every one of them. Now, I mentioned a couple of things I did in the carburetors, and I'll let someone else sort that out. But I do tweak the carburetor to where I make sure the throttle plate closes. So that's 6, every one of them. I put a OEM Husqvarna decomp. An OEM steel I'm sure is fine, but I use the Husqvarna because that's what I have for source. So that's another thing I do on all of them. On every one of these I have, I'm going to go through that exercise. So, and I think those things solve just a lot of problems, you know. I mean, I can fight with the bad carburetor, and I can fight with the muffler, and yeah, I can throw clutches at it. I mean, if you're a guy just doing firewood, these are probably just fine. On mine, I'm putting in the better quality clutch for sure, you know. And I don't really see the need right now to put a better crank in there. I mean, there was a time when I was putting better cranks, but that's, I don't know if you need to do that. I got a couple out with the loggers, and the stock crank, when the cylinder bore is lined up, is fine, you know. I put a different crank in one of them in all three of them that are out with this one particular logger, two with the Farmertec cranks and one with a better quality crank from HL Supply, and they were all running and nothing has failed. Another thing I do in all of them is put the OEM O-rings underneath these caps. So I guess I'm beginning to lose count. There's a bunch of little things. But I consider that minor. You know, you might throw another $100 into it, and those things really make a big difference. I've had pull start failures, and there's some better parts there, but that's your choice. I'm not going to get into that. Those are things that are, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. They're not every one of my saws. I think this is just a straight Farmertec pull start. It's lasted a couple years now. So I'm not going to say that has to be done on all the saws. And I do my muffler mods. For a person who's going to actually go out in the woods and do this for a living, this doesn't make any sense at all. It really doesn't. For my farm, it's fine. HL Supply, yet again, sells a muffler that I had highlighted in one of the other videos made by Highway that has effectively the dual port, but it also has a spark arrestor screens, and that's what I would recommend as a muffler instead of doing what I've done. Do as I say, not as I've done. So those are the things that I think are necessary to have a useful saw. And, you know, as I've said before, it's sort of a moving target, but all the ones I've given out to the loggers have had those basic changes. You know, the adjuster and bar studs and the... and I think this one here is also pretty important. This chain brake spring, OEM choke, trigger, you know, just the ones I just finished articulating. Decomp, handlebar, got to do that. The handlebars, that's, I'm sure a guy who runs in the backyard and never gets a saw stuck is fine with the one that comes with a saw, but I just bend them like spaghetti. They just, every time I have to push or shove on that saw, which unfortunately is probably more than it should, that thing just bends when it's from the Farmertec one. Yeah, and like I said, the carburetor, I make some changes there. But today, this one's getting the rest of the upgrades. And it's going to be put into the truck. And it's going to be a useful saw. You can see it's getting a little dirt in there. Doesn't seem to have hurt it much, but it has sucked in a little bit of dirt. On this saw right here, this was my Farmer Jones saw, I radiused all that stuff in there. And believe it or not, well, I shouldn't say any more, but I did modify that intake quite a bit actually. It's not going to show much up on camera, I don't think. Let's just do both the choke and the trigger in one shot. And then I believe this saw is going to have most of the upgrades it needs. Screw right back here, that is really all you need to do. It's really not that hard to put these back together again either. Right? You can see how the spring wraps around the trigger, the axle of the trigger. And then goes underneath here, then underneath that for the safety. Then for the throttle rod, it just goes right in the top. One of the most simple trigger assembly concepts I've ever seen. There's a lot about these saws I like, and I know this is going to make some of my Huztl friends a little bit upset. Yeah, and I can argue that it's a lot easier to disassemble a Husqvarna and things like that, you know. But these saws got their own strengths and weaknesses. But I got to tell you, on the fun factor, just the fun factor, these 660 kit saws, or if you go get a original edition OEM I don't think you can get more power per dollar with any saw concept that I can even conceive of than these. Now, I was able to achieve better with the Huztl 390 because I've got sources. But for a person who does not have the sources that I have or the access to, you know, old logger saws, and because of the people who I work with and work for, you gotta be on your own. Very, very, very hard to beat this for just power for dollar and fun. So I'm just going to release that rod. I'm going to take this and release this right there. And I'm going to take this choke throttle deal out too. Right here is the wire for the kill switch. It just pulls straight out. That's the Farmertec. This is the OEM. I don't know if anybody caught that. Maybe I should pull it out again. But this guy right here, the easiest way to put this on is to slide it over the end that way. Push that rod all the way back in there. And do that, and it holds it down. And this is going over. Now the trigger is going to come out easy. The spring goes on like that, where it hooks over the top like that. And it sets right back down in there. I put the throttle rod on right there. And then this guy goes right back in there, and of course the spring goes up underneath here. Like that. Once that's all in there, and trust me, throw it away. And throw this away. Do not store them. This kind of goes in like this. Underneath there. And just sort of clamps down on all this stuff. And that one screw in the bottom here, this would hold it all together. Choke. Look at that. I now have a saw where I can set the idle the way it's supposed to be set. I'm going to see if I can get the camera down in there. So the reason why that's not totally closed, little sliver along the bottom, is because I have the idle adjust screw set here where that taper on it, I don't know if you can see it, but that taper actually holds that throttle just a little bit. Now, if you hold the throttle and push the choke lever down, you see how that push the choke on, and then when you go to the next position, basically if you look inside there, you'll see that that throttle is held open, and then as soon as that's your high idle for starting. So you've choked it, and then when you hit that next position for high idle, to start it, the engine's running a little bit higher RPM. As soon as you hit the throttle, see, it releases that and now it lets it close again. Now what it is on the ones that come from Farmertec is that high idle position is not there. It's just not working. And what I've done in the past is, as you see in here, to tune around that is I just set the idle very high, and that allows it to start. That goofy thing's all misshapen. I think it's going to work anyway though. Something that really doesn't matter, because once it breaks the seal on the outside, you're done anyway. You know, I wonder if I can do an old motorcycle trick. This was something we used to do on the dirt bikes. And to some it's just another mess to clean up. But it might keep some of the particles from getting inside that motor. The other just for fun project for my saws is getting the carburetor right on this 925. I guess I could try to clean that carb out first. If not, I've got this one to put on there. Get in the camera. Gotta get that hooked on. So I'm going to explore the concept of a split fuel line. I pulled the one out of there, and I guess I already threw it down the floor, but right where it goes into the tank, there's like a grommet that this pushes into, and it was all ripped up. So I think I had a line go bad on me. That's what happened. So coming up with a fuel line for Homelite. Can't happen today, right? But I want to run the darn thing. So you have to go with your plan Bs, you know. This is a Homelite part, and this is a fuel line from one of the MS660s. It's too short. So what I'm thinking of doing, and I don't know if this makes any sense at all, is see if I can use that for the into tank grommet, and then attach a little piece of tubing on this, like this, and then put a fuel line on that, and see if that, yeah. So it went in. See if it'll come back out. So you can see what I did, but basically I did exactly what I said I was going to do. And well, suffice to say that I put a little tube in there and line, and this is the business end of a steel fuel line. Now the trick is, can I get this in there? Of course, the right answer is to get a Homelite fuel line, which I will do. So now the question is, will it work? We're gonna find out. I think the thing that makes me most nervous on this whole deal is the connection of that little steel tubing on the inside of the steel fuel line. I don't know if that's sealed up enough, but that's the key. If that works, if that seals, then that's going to work fine. Yeah, I think that one's ready to rock and roll. Make some chips. At least as good as it's going to get without a full set of seals on the bottom end. I'm sure there's a bit of an air leak in that old saw, but I like it, and I've run that thing for a long time. Ugly as it is, it's my ugly. Needs a new muffler. One thing I can tell you is, boy, you better watch your hand if you got to change that chain or sprocket in the middle of the woods, because that muffler is hot, and it's an outboard clutch, as you can see on this one out there. So there's not a lot of room. So you got to be careful when you do those kind of things. But I think that one there is going to be a project. I think that's going to get that one running. It's got a broken handle, I think. I don't know if it's crushed or just parts on the inside, but I think I've got most of the parts it takes to turn that into a running saw. I think that'd be fun. So I think I'm going to go fishing or ride the motorcycle or something. This is my day off. Oh, wait a minute. Every day's a day off. Talk to you later. Bye for now. Ooh, come on, baby. Whoa, whoa, whoa. There's a little more fish than last time. Oh, yeah. I've seen you before, haven't I? We'll get you out of there. Come on. This is actually a good-sized fish. I knew they were in there. Now let's get this out of you. Get you back to where you belong. Now I think we got this fish once before to this year already. You ready?